as we all know, I've never met a rabbit hole I didn't want to go down into. And this episode is no different. Yes, I got derailed a few times, but if you really just take a step back, you know what I mean, and think about it, maybe squint your eyes a little, you'll see that it's all connected. It's all connected, from the nutritional value of, rabbit meat to demolishing an old house. There's a through line there somewhere. And once you listen to this week's episode, you'll see what I'm trying to say. I mean, come on. It's pretty obvious. But anyway, in this week's episode, we are still sticking on theme with, goals, the future, and the life that we're trying to build. I think these past couple of weeks, that's, what we've been talking about, but just, I guess, from different angles, from talking about our relationship with time and how that sometimes robs us of being in the moment and really appreciating the progress that we've made, as well as, the value of just making hay while the sun shines. And that rest is just as productive as, producing things, right? To the need to celebrate oneself and, just really gas yourself up. Like, all these things are connected in terms of how we want to live the lives that we imagine ourselves having, right? Our dream life, that some of our habits and our thinking is getting in the way of us, really reaching those goals. And this week's episode is no different. We talk about distancing ourselves and severing our relationships from the systems, the structures, and the people that we seek validation from. And that desire for validation might be the very thing that is holding us back. So sit back, relax, enjoy the episode, and I hope all my little rabbit holes, that somehow they connect in the end. See you on the other side. So, let's say you've inherited a house, and the house obviously has everything you need in it: bed, sofa, fridge, TV, stove, pots, pans, the whole shebang. There's really no need for you to buy anything new. Everything is still kind of functional, a bit worn out, might need a bit of, finesse to use, but all in all, in good working condition, right? You could just walk in with the clothes on your back and you wouldn't necessarily need to buy anything new. Now, here's the catch. This isn't necessarily your dream house. Now, when you were younger, you didn't really have any other option, right? You didn't know what else was out there. This type of home, maybe even this home in particular, was all you knew, right? This was your safe place. This was your home. And there's something really comforting about, being able to keep this home, right? And that maybe your future kids could also grow up in this house and make memories and so on and so forth, right? But as you've gotten older, right, and you now have a different perspective on the world, you've visited other people's houses, you watch Top Billing and all these other, architectural digest and stuff like that, and you're beginning to imagine what it would be like to live in a different house, right? So you try to make minor, adjustments. You maybe reupholster the sofas, right? But obviously reupholstery it's not magic, The structure of the sofa will still remain the same. You've just changed, how it looks, maybe modernized the fabric a bit, but structurally, it's still that old, wooden style, with those little bumps on the back. It's nothing like the modern chic minimalistic vibe that you want to go for. But at least it's, the right color. And you decide, let's do a little fresh coat of paint. The old walls were lime green and you want something a little more neutral, something a little more earthy. So you paint the walls, right? But the layout of the house itself doesn't really lend itself to the vibe that you're going for, right? And the green was so bright that sometimes, on a really hot summer's day when all that light is streaming in, a part of you still thinks that you can see that green paint, fighting to shine its way through, fighting to be seen, and you're like, okay, cool. You put down the primer, you did all the things. Short of stripping the paint off the walls, you feel like you've done enough to cover the green. But you have those moments, right, where the beige color that you painted, you kind of still feel like you can see that green, right? And you don't know if it's in your head or if it's really there, but nonetheless, it bothers you, right? On top of that, the layout is, you want a more open plan, flowy type, feng shui vibe. And instead, it's doorway after doorway. And there isn't really a free flow of movement, right? The size of the rooms aren't quite right. And you feel like the ratios are a bit, disproportionate to how you would want to spend your time, right? That maybe in the past, women spend most of their time in the kitchen and in the laundry area. So those rooms are a lot bigger and a lot more spacious because those are the rooms that were a lot more lived in, right? Whereas you want a reading nook and, you want to invest your time in being more social and having friends over. So you want a large dining room where you can fit, you and your closest 15 friends, around a dinner table, right? You want to have games night. So, but the social rooms aren't that big, right? Because people didn't spend too much time back then, just idle. There wasn't such a thing as like a TV room, right? People had tasks to do. They ate and went to bed. Speaking of going to bed, the bedroom as well isn't that big because in the past rooms were, the bedroom was a functional space, right? And you would like, to maybe have like a bookshelf in your bedroom, or you want more cupboard space because obviously back then, you know, you didn't have 500 million, Shein outfits to choose from. You had your regular daytime outfits, which was like maybe three, I'm at home, I'm not really going anywhere outfits. You had three, I'm running errands, I need to look presentable, but I'm not going anywhere fancy. And maybe three, I'm going somewhere fancy outfits, and three outfits for work, if your partner ever went to work. And even then, because the way the world was set up, the man was most likely the one working. So he's the only one who really needed, that extra space, and, the woman was fine. So, you've inherited this house, and just structurally, it doesn't reflect the type of life that you're living, right? And it doesn't reflect the type of life you want to have, right? The type of home you want to inhabit. And the more you think about it, right, you think about all the terrible memories that you also had in this home, right? That the nostalgia of having your children grow up in your childhood home doesn't sound that good anymore because you remember how tiny your bedroom was and having to share it with two other siblings and how claustrophobic that felt. And do you really want your children to go through all of that, right? Especially when, the idea of maybe knocking down a few walls to create the more flowy vibe that you're going for, that you can only knock down so many walls before compromising the structural integrity of the home, right? So you have to make compromises, and you decide, well, I'll knock down this wall and maybe one more other wall upstairs, but that's as far as I'm going to have to take it because I don't want to risk it, right? I don't want to risk, the house collapsing on top of me. So I'm just going to have to live with these remnants of the past, right? That this home will never really truly reflect who I am and where I want to be in life, because it just can't, it really just can't. So you decide to settle. Now, why am I telling you this useless story, right? Because in this economy, who's inheriting houses? The point that I'm trying to get to here is something that has been coming up a lot actually in my social media, on my social media feed, right? I don't really follow celebrities and stuff like that, and I tend to follow these pages that yeah, that talk about life and cover similar topics that we cover here on the podcast, right? And something that came up a lot was one, talking about, whiteness and blackness, and the fact that it is futile and unrealistic for black people to expect white people to participate in the dismantling of a structure that solely benefits them, a structure that was built on the backs of black people for the subjugation of black people, you know, for the oppression of black people, and that black blood was shed for the structure, and the structure exists merely to exalt white people and whiteness and capitalism. So now to ask the people who benefit from the system to dismantle the system that protects them, right, and that secures their position in society, like what person in their right mind would do that, right? What person in their right mind would put themselves in harm's way to help someone else? For no good reason. There's no benefit to the white man for helping black people. And yet you're expecting them to give you approval, to give you the thumbs up, right? For your own freedom. Again, asking your oppressor for permission to be free. And that's just never going to happen. And at the same time, I'm seeing another post from another lady who says that if you want to break generational curses, you cannot keep seeking approval from the cursed generation, right? If you're seeing patterns in your family, patterns that you want to break and move away from, you cannot distance yourself from the pattern while still trying to be validated by the pattern. Because the pattern and people only validate what they know. There's that confirmation bias, right? That if you're doing something that I myself would do, then it is right. And if you're doing something that I cannot imagine myself doing, then it must be wrong. And there is this innate, human trait to moralize things that are foreign to us. That something cannot merely just be, different. They're like, oh, okay, I wouldn't do that, but I guess that's another way to go about it. And be neutral to that information, that more often than not, people will immediately ascribe a moral value to something that they are unfamiliar with, or something that, they cannot imagine themselves doing. Even something as simple as, I was talking to these people in the mall who try to get you to sign up to like save some cause, and like for $50 a day or for $50 a month, you are helping save the pandas or something like that. Anyway, I was approached by one of these guys who were doing some sort of campaign to save cats and dogs from being eaten by people. And I was just like, what a strange cause to have. Like, yeah, I have a dog. I love my dog. I can't imagine someone, clubbing my dog and skinning him and eating him, right? That's just unfathomable to me. But at the same time, like, for me to say that it is just objectively wrong for people to be eating dogs and cats, who am I to say that, really? Because we're out here eating chicken and beef and pork and all sorts of things. And I mean, that could be a pet too. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why, because you have some sort of sentimental attachment to these animals and you imagine them in a particular way, that someone else seeing Snoopy as, looking scrumdiddlyumptious with a little bit of aromat and, salt and pepper, like, what is actually wrong about that? Do you get what I mean? And it was just the weirdness that this whole organization was centered around such a niche thing. It's not about protecting all animals, right? And the environment as a whole, that we need to treat animals better, right? That animals in the zoo are being abused and that they deserve to be free. And all these other terrible things that are happening to animals. Instead, in South Africa, of all places, you really think that dogs and cats being eaten is the biggest issue that we need to be addressing. And it was wild to me, right? Absolutely wild to me. But at the same time, it just goes towards proving my point that it's because these people cannot fathom a world where animals that they perceive as being pets, right, and being companion animals, that someone else, could see that animal as anything but, that, a companion. Because also, I don't understand also how rabbits somehow are never included in this chat, because I grew up with people having pet bunnies. I mean, bunnies are sold at the pet store as well. Like, rabbits, in my mind, are pets, but also I'm very aware of people eating rabbits, right? And that the meat is, tasty and, high in iron and all these wonderful nutritional facts. And somehow maybe it's because rabbits reproduce, at a faster rate, that they kind of feel like it's okay. But anyway, I digress. I'm really down a rabbit hole here. But the point is that is a small example of how people really can get up in arms about something merely because it is different from how they would choose to interact with, an object, or how they would choose to engage in a situation, right? That there's this moral value that's placed on it, and now the other person is now a bad person for doing or seeing things differently. Now, if you are looking for approval from the people whose lives you do not want to emulate, how are they ever going to see anything you do in your life, any shift or any change that you're trying to make in your life? How will they ever see that as a good thing? Do you get what I mean? Because for them, what they are doing is good. No person in their right mind is living their life consciously knowing that everything that they're doing is wrong, right? That it's harmful in some way. They think that they're fine, that they are doing no harm, that they mean no harm, that it just is what it is, right? And this is how you do things. The people who go to the zoo and are fascinated by the animals, they don't think that they're participating in something horrific, right? For them, it's a fun day out with the family. So to then ask for those people, right, to approve of you choosing to not go to the zoo, to ask those people to approve of you maybe sneaking into the zoo at night and trying to free the animals or trying to close down the zoo, right? For them, you are denying them or getting in the way of them doing something that they enjoy, having time with their family. Or in fact, there's something wrong with you that maybe you don't want to have a good time with your family, that you're robbing your children of the opportunity of seeing these wonderful exotic animals. And how selfish can you be to deny your offspring that pleasure that we all grew up going to the zoo, seeing the lion, being fascinated and being in awe of all of God's wonders. And now, what are the children going to see now? You know what I mean? How are the children ever going to know that lions are real? You know, how are they ever going to know that penguins are actually kind of cute, even though they smell terrible? Oh my gosh, penguins stink. But that's neither here nor there, right? Because this is just, it's a rite of passage. It's crucial, right? It's one of those things that every family does. It's the quintessential family experience. You go to the zoo, you see the animals, you feed the little monkeys, you know what I mean? You get the little nuts in your hand and the giraffe bends its long ass neck down to, eat from your hand. You get the little seal that, will catch the ball and do a little dance and all these wonderful things. You'll get the orca whale that is fucking depressed, by the way. You'll get it to like splash some water on you, and it's such an exhilarating experience, right? And like, wow, what type of person are you? Why are you so weird? Like, come on. Don't be a party pooper. You just think you're better than everyone. Like, you're trying to find an issue with everything. What's wrong with you? And that's the response that you're going to get, because they'll never understand. Because they're not interested in changing their lives, because they don't see anything that needs changing. Right? So, where am I going with this? Right? You may be wondering, because we've gone down many a rabbit hole, from inheriting a house to, eating rabbits. And now there's a depressed orca whale splashing water in your face. The point that I'm trying to make here is that it is unsustainable, impractical, and unrealistic for you to expect the systems that you are trying to move away from to assist, participate in, or approve of your choice to do something different with your life. Right? That sometimes your need for validation is what's holding you back from taking the next step in your life. You don't need to be understood to move forward. You don't need other people's approval to succeed. You just have to do what you believe is right. And as you move forward, you will learn more. More things will be revealed to you. They'll come to your attention. You will discover more things about yourself and adjust accordingly, right? Keeping your larger vision as your North Star. So I'll give you an example for myself. I want peace of mind, right? That when I sit down and I, write down what my core values are, safety is a really big thing for me. Feeling mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially safe, those are things that I want, right? And that to be financially safe, right, does require a bit of extra hard work and effort and discipline and all these other things, right? And those are things that I'm working on. But at the same time, I also don't ever want to find myself in a position where my time is not my own, where I do not have room to breathe, do not have room to rest. And honestly, when I imagine my dream life, I wake up at my normal time, bright and early, but there's no rush. I'm not chasing anything or anyone, right? That I get to sit in bed for a bit and read and journal and, slowly get out of bed, make myself a cup of tea, have some, breakfast, do like a morning exercise or take my dog for a walk while listening to music, And like the order of events differs, as I imagine this life, right? But the essence of it remains the same, that my day starts peacefully, centered around myself and my own mental and physical health. That I start my day taking care of myself first. Much like in a crashing airplane, you put the mask on yourself first before helping others. And I want to have that sort of pattern in my life, right? Then maybe at around 10, that's when my day, actually starts. I've showered, I'm fresh, I'm refreshed, I'm good. Now I can go into the office, or now I can start my work, whatever that work is, right? And I'm doing it at a high level that I don't have to, kill myself for peanuts. That my work is valued to the point where I don't have to overwork myself to prove that I'm worth the money I'm being given, but that my value is seen, that it is appreciated, and is reciprocated in the money that I receive for my work. And therefore, I have the room, to have a more balanced life. I have the financial means to explore other elements, of my life, other facets of my personality and my interests, right? That I can afford to pursue my interests. And all these extra things, they're intertwined with each other. Now, if I were to talk to my parents or the older generation basically about how I choose to achieve those things, or that this is the life that I desire, to them it sounds like laziness, right? The fact that I want my day to only start at 10, well, the day is basically over. I'm like, yeah, sure, but I don't want to be working into the night either, right? I want to, maybe if I start working at 10, then I'm done working at 3, and then I have the rest of the day to myself. Or I could even still work till 5, right? But then the work is done and I can leave it there and, go home and have dinner with friends and, you know what I mean? Just be social, have a life, and not be burdened by the work that I do, so much so that it drains the life out of me. I don't want to be doing work that is so draining anymore. I want my work to be my work and for me to let go of it, right? So that I can pick up other things in the evening, maybe have a hobby, join, some sort of dance class, take my dog for another walk, and just have that routine of, the time to be productive is there and I maximize that time. But I also know that I have a right to other pursuits and that I have the option and the freedom to do so, right? That is not a life that my father, or any other like older, person in my life really understands, because for them, right, hard work is the measure of a person. And even with some of my peers as well, with this like hustle culture that we're always on the move, we're always pushing something. And I'm kind of saying, I don't want to push something. I don't want to constantly be pushing on the grind, I just want a life of ease, with cool breezes and sunshine, cozy blankets and rain, pattering at the window. That's the life that I want. And yes, it might mean working hard now to get to it, but at the same time, there are things that I can do now to maintain those values that I have, right? That I practice setting up boundaries, because I'll never get the life that I want if I don't learn how to say no now. If I don't accept that I am going to disappoint people and that I will not be understood by some, but for those who do understand, they will see me and they might be encouraged to do the same. People who've been secretly desiring the same thing will see that it is possible and will join me, right? And even if they don't, right? Even if I'm not making a difference in anyone else's life, making a difference in my own life is good enough, right? It's good enough that I want the change for myself. And I can't move forward while still holding on to the past. I need to sever ties with the past. I need to sever ties with the people who resemble the life I'm trying to move away from. Do you get what I mean? Like, if there's a history of, teenage pregnancy and, single moms and all of that stuff, in your family and you decide you don't want that. You want to pursue your education and then a career, and you want to be married before you have kids. You might go home and there might be comments about how you are not woman enough, right? Because, you know, people your age, your peers have kids now, or at least in a stable relationship, and you're behind in life, right? And they'll diminish your accomplishments because it's not what they value, and therefore they cannot see it for what it is, right? And if anything, it's stupid because, again, it is foreign to them, and therefore they are going to immediately assume that it is bad. The same could apply with anything else, right? You choosing to move away from the majority, right, and subvert the status quo, that puts you in an awkward position. You are now alone and exposed, right? And the nail that sticks out is the one that gets hit the hardest. Sure. But no matter how people might try and make you feel guilty for wanting a better life for yourself and say like, oh, you think you're better than us, right? That, why? What's wrong with how we've done things in the past? I turned out fine. I'm okay. Are you saying that I'm a bad mother? Are you saying I'm a bad father? Why do you hate us so much? Rah, 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 rah. Like, people are going to try and guilt you into coming back and joining them, because that's all they know. And it might be scary for them to see you venturing off into the unknown, right? But you know why you're making the choices that you're making. And going back to the house that you've inherited, the house you've inherited is the life that you were brought into, right? You don't choose your family. You don't choose the circumstances of your birth, the circumstances of your upbringing. You don't have that choice. But once you become an adult, the house is now in your possession. And you can choose, to polish a turd and see if it becomes gold, right? You can choose to, make minor changes and fool yourself into thinking that you're transforming your life when, if anything, it's just same shit, different day, right? But the structures of your past will always hinder you from actually growing as much as you'd like to, right? And the only way you can live in your dream house, the only way that you can have your dream life is by bulldozing the whole thing all the way to the foundations, bulldozing it, removing all the rubble. And not to say that you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There might be some things that you appreciate, that you value, and you can keep those things aside. Understanding that you can't keep so many things that there's no room for you to acquire new things, right? So you really need to be selective and use discernment when choosing what is and isn't valuable, right? And really also reflect on why you consider it to be valuable in the first place. But once again, it still requires a complete overhaul. You have to bulldoze the house so that support beams can be placed in different areas so that you don't have to worry about the house collapsing on top of you and the structural integrity of the home in general. Instead, the house will be built and the structures put in place, the support beams, right? The real foundational parts of the home, the skeleton of this home will be built around the life that you want. Much like I said earlier, right? That you don't just wait until you have the dream life that you want, that one day it's just going to happen for you. You start now where you're at, slowly building the muscle of setting boundaries, slowly, training your mind to look for moments of ease, to actively seek out and carve out moments of peace and quiet, moments of leisure, right? Because if you grew up in a home where you're made to feel guilty about sleeping in, right? And where you do secretly believe that you've wasted a day if you're not productive every day, right? This is something that you also have to train yourself out of. It's something you have to unlearn. And that's not something that you'll just magically get over one day. It is something that you have to practice slowly. And it's something that's accessible to you now. You give yourself a day and say, Sundays are my days to be lazy. That if I want to be productive, I'm going to have to do it Monday to Saturday. But Sunday, I'm not doing anything. I will read, I will pamper myself, I will do whatever, but my output will only be towards myself. I'm not doing anything, for the betterment of society. I'm not doing anything for other people. Sunday is for me. And the only thing that I will do, the only thing I will get up and, and use my energy on are things that have to do with me and me alone. And you practice that so that when you do eventually get to that point in your life where you are maybe now more financially stable and you have the power to, set your own hours and all these other things, right? That you have exercised the muscle enough to know that you deserve the time off in the morning. You deserve to start your day at 10, and that you're not going to bat an eye or apologize for it because you have confronted those feelings, that guilt. You've worked through it. When, now in this phase, right, when they try to ask you to work on a Sunday, or when you see an email coming in on a Sunday, to practice ignoring it. Today is my day off. I'll see it on Monday. Whoever's emailed me is not dying. And if they were, then I'm not the person to help them because I'm not a paramedic. So either way, I'll see to it on Monday. Right? And that you slowly build that muscle now so that when you do give yourself those mornings off and other people at work are, they're sending you emails from like 7 o'clock in the morning, you know to ignore it and just say, my work starts at 10. This time is mine. It belongs to me, and I'm going to do things that are enriching for me only, right? So you start to reclaim your time now so that it isn't going to be an issue in the future, so that you don't undermine your future self because you don't know how to set boundaries around your time because you never took the time to practice. And you do that by just doing the thing instead of waiting for other people to give you permission. As a Black person who, you want to enter into certain industries, you want to do certain things with your life, and you kind of believe that there are structures that are hindering you from doing those things. No, we're no longer going to seek the approval of institutions that were built to destroy us. Instead, you create your own thing. Find other Black people who are also interested in the same thing and start your own thing outside of the systems and the structures that already exist. Yes, you can only go outside of it, so far, right? Because our money and all these other things are still very much tied to whiteness and capitalism and all of those things. But you find a way that maybe instead of being employed by these companies that don't actually care about their Black clientele, that you're like, I'm going to start my own business, be my own employer. I'm not going to report to a white man anymore because those niggas will never give a shit about me or the people that I represent. And I want me and my niggas to be taken care of and taken care of properly. So if no one else is going to do it, I'm going to do it then. Right? Instead of trying to enter into these spaces and begging for a seat at the table, right? Build your own table. Invite the people that you think deserve to be there. Because even if you do beg and claw to be at the table and you finally get there, you're still alone. There's no one to commiserate with because you're the stranger at the table, the person who begged to be there. They were just doing you a favor, really. So the only thing you're allowed to do is be grateful. You can't question, you can't fully engage. You just be happy you made it. And is that really a way to live? So, the long and short of today's episode is stop looking for validation. You don't need it. Just do what you want to do. Stop building the life that you want. It's going to be hard. It's going to feel lonely. It's going to feel impossible. But it isn't. One day, you're going to look back and see that this was all worth it. That, you had no reason to be worried because everything does work out in the end. You do end up having the life that you want, and if anything, better than you even imagined. And you will thank your current self for being brave, for taking the step, for defying everything that you hold dear, defying all expectations, choosing to veer left, knowing that there's a better path for you. It's going to be hard, but it's not impossible. And you will make it. Just don't give up. Don't give up. Keep fighting. There will be lots of rejection. Not that many people will understand. You might be called silly, unrealistic, naive, foolish, whatever. But at the end of the day, you know why you're pursuing the life that you're pursuing. You know why you are turning away from certain patterns and generational curses, right? You know why you are choosing this unbeaten path. So let that reason guide you. Let that reason be the strength you need in moments of doubt. Remember why you have chosen this path. Really think about what it would feel like in 5 years' time when you've achieved your goal. What do you imagine that feeling like? The peace, the joy, the lack of anxiety, everything, and not just emotionally, what does it feel like? How does that feel in your body to be safe, to feel cared for, even if it is just by yourself? To have gotten to the point where you've built that trust with yourself, where you know that you can take care of yourself, that you've got you, that you'll never abandon yourself again, that your people pleaser days are behind you. What does that feel like? To just be, to no longer be afraid of judgment. That, it terrifies you now, but, in 5 years' time and in 10 years' time, however long it takes you to get there, sit and really meditate on that. Let that joy and that excitement fill you. And let that be your North Star as other people choose to derail or try to derail or minimize your dreams. Remember why you've chosen this path. And don't let people and their small minds and their lack of imagination limit you. I think I've mentioned this before, but you do not exist within the limitations of other people's imagination. Your existence, your life is only limited by your imagination and yours alone. And not just your imagination, but Your life is limited by and lives within the confines of what you believe is possible and what you believe you deserve. So, if anything needs to be confronted, it's you and your own beliefs and how you talk to yourself, how you perceive yourself, how you perceive your life, right? That's the only thing that you need to really be facing every day. And that's the only thing you need to validate is your dreams. The only thing you need validation from, right, is your beliefs, your core beliefs. Am I on the right path? Is this in alignment with my core beliefs and my long-term goals? Those are the only things that you need validation from. People, your parents, strangers, society, fuck them. They're not going to be there at the end of the day. When you crawl into your grave, their, vision for you, what they thought you were possible, or what they thought you were capable of, won't matter. It won't matter at all. What will matter is what you did with your life, not what they told you to do with your life. So, without taking too much time, because I can never seem to have a short episode, please don't give up. I know it's, still early in the year and, you still feel like there's a lot of potential, but save this episode and listen back to it when you have moments of doubt. The desire for the change, the desire for this life that you want, I don't think it would have been put in your heart, that your eyes would be revealed to the change that's needed if it wasn't possible and if it wasn't meant for you. All you need to do is believe that you deserve that life, you deserve that peace of mind, you deserve that thing you desire, and be willing and brave enough to take the steps towards the thing that you want. And even if, like I said in the previous episode, where you find yourself in a bit of an Icarus moment and you never actually achieve it, right? You die having never actually, gotten to that, Valhalla, for lack of a better term. You would have still died a lot closer than anyone else who didn't bother to try. That you still would have, lived a life worth living, and an admirable one at that, because each day you stripped away a bit of your past, a bit of that, cycle, that bit by bit you let go and got rid of all these things. And going back to that house, right? That if you do break down the house and build something new, your children and future generations and the people who come into your life, they will have the benefit of experiencing something different, something that you never had the benefit of experiencing growing up. But you have the benefit of creating those experiences for yourself now and for the people around you. That your life and you become the person that you needed when you were a child, that you create the safe space that you always wanted when you were a child, that even if you don't reach your goal in its entirety, right, you die as a person who has healed their inner child. And that is an amazing thing to achieve, more than anything else, that your inner child is finally at peace, that you broke a generational curse, regardless of what the outcome of your life ended up looking like. Your constant pursuit of that better life already breaks so many generational curses and already does so much work towards healing your inner child, your inner teenager. So it's not for naught. Even if you don't, get to where you think you wanted to go, you will get to where you need to be. So keep trying, keep pushing. I believe in you. See, I told you it all makes sense. But no, you doubted me. You didn't believe that I could make a dilapidated house and rabbit meat make sense and connect somehow. But who's laughing now? Who's laughing now? Probably still you, because even I'm not sure how the two things connect, and I don't know how I got to rabbit meat, but I mean, I do, but also I don't. You know what I mean? Nonetheless, we're here now. You've made it to the end of the episode, and I hope you found some tidbits that were useful to you. I hope that the episode was enriching and enlightening, and that hopefully you got the motivation that you need to set boundaries in place and to understand that as much as you still yearn for the validation of, your elders, your parents, your family members, and even these systems that seek to oppress you, right? That you want to be loved by the thing that hates you, right? That I hope that this episode has at least made you aware that that is something that you're doing. And that awareness hopefully brings you closer towards severing that relationship so that you can have the freedom necessary to pursue the things that you want. I know I was having a conversation with a friend of mine where we were saying that, not in a bad way, but kind of in a sad way, that we are sort of waiting for our parents to die for us to really be free to do and be the way that we really want to be, right? And do the things that we really want to do. That the thing that is holding us back is our fear of their judgment, right? While simultaneously talking about how we wanted to move away from the way they raised us, right? And the way they raised us to see the world and how we were taught to, see ourselves in the world. That somehow that there was this very obvious contradiction that sat with us that I think in the moment we couldn't really see or even hear ourselves, right? That we are simultaneously saying that we do not approve of how these people see things, that we vehemently disagree with, their way of doing things, that we believe that we have a better way or a different way or more suitable way of conducting our lives, and that we are very aware that they do not exist in alignment with that. But yet at the same time, we still want them to approve of it. And how paradoxical is that? You know what I mean? So yeah, it happens to all of us, right? No one is immune, and it is natural to want validation, right? That it's that survival instinct, right? That if the rest of the group is saying it's a good idea, that there's safety in numbers, and to venture off into the wild by yourself is never really recommended. But in this instance, it's what's necessary. So I hope this episode has at least given you perhaps the tools or the courage to take the steps you need towards the life that you want. See you next week.